It's good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy. Back with Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I take my version 1.0 shot of the Commander in front of us on my quest to brew the magic world. You know the motto, it's ABB, always be brewing, and that's what we're back to do today. The deck list is going to be down in the description for you below. So I'd really appreciate it if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, consider checking out those links in the description. The Discord has been popping lately, and I'd love for you to come join. But today, we're finishing off Mardu Week by looking at our third version of Zurgo, Zurgo Thunder's Decree, a 3-mana 2/4 Orc Warrior with Mobilize 2, so making 2 of those warriors on a tag. But during our end step, warrior tokens we control have this token can't be sacrificed. We're going to stop ourselves basically from sacrificing those mobilized tokens to allow us to build up a little bit more of a board of warriors. So we're going to go kind of more warrior tribal here, try to go wide, take advantage of the fact that we're not going to sacrifice these warriors, and try to just build ourselves a league of warriors as we push towards winning in combat. I want to give a quick thank you to the channel members. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in checking out all of our videos just a little bit early, check it out down below. But I think the first thing, of course, we want to care about is Mobilize. Mobilize is our new mechanic, and there's actually some really good cards in the set that have it. I think first off, it's hard to talk about tokens these days without doublers, and I really like the new Elspeth. I mean, Elspeth's great, right? Doubling the amount of tokens you make. But the thing I really like about Elspeth is the 0 power ability, just to give all our creatures flying until our next turn, is a really nice way to potentially just get more damage out of our creatures, right? If we have opponents that don't have flyers, it means we're more guaranteed to get in. And the -3 giving us a creature destruction is kind of nice. Bone Kieran Butcher gives all of our attacking tokens Death Touch, a really great ability. Going to have our opponents have to stop and think about chump blocking, and packs 2 of its own. Stormsinger mobilize 1, but we get this nice Aristocrat's ability that whenever one of our creatures dies, each opponent loses 1 and we gain 1. So that's kind of nice. I mean, just because we don't sacrifice our warriors at the end of the turn doesn't mean they're not going to potentially get blocked and killed. So it's nice to have that ability baked onto our creature. Voice of Victory has mobilize 2 and stops our opponents from casting spells during our turn. I think this is really important because some of the most key removal of our things is going to happen in combat. So much of our deck cares about combat. And so when we're attacking, right, our opponents have the highest chance of just knocking down what we're trying to build. So stopping them from casting spells on our turn is pretty huge. It doesn't stop everything, right? There are still abilities and things our opponents can use, but it's going to cut out most of them. Of course, we're going to play Zurgo Stormrender as well, getting that mobilize 1. And then if our tokens would leave the battlefield, if they're attacking, we get draw a card, otherwise everybody loses 1. And that new infantry shield is just great. Giving a creature mobilize X, where X is its power and menace. We love it. It can be used on a lot of different things. And pretty much anything, just to get more warriors in and more warriors going. But we have a lot of creatures that care about warriors. I think this is where we're going to kind of build out this deck versus Zurgo Stormrender, which is caring more about just other tokens in general. We got that new Gornog from Foundation's Jumpstart. Whenever one or more warriors we control attack a player, target creature that player control becomes a coward. Cowards can't block our warriors. And attacking warriors get +X/+0, where X is the number of cowards our opponents control. So we're basically getting another creature to become a coward every time one of our warriors attacks somebody, growing all of our warriors. It's a really nice buff, but I think it also stops a key creature from blocking at the right time, which could be very useful. And most of the creatures in our deck are that we want to be caring about attacking our warriors. We do have things like Bone Kieran Butcher that's a demon, but most of them are warriors. Kargan Warleader is just going to buff all the rest of our warriors, which is nice. Mindblade Redder says whenever one of our opponents is dealt combat damage, if any of that damage was dealt by a warrior, we get to draw a card and lose a life, so potentially getting multiple of those per turn, right? Fitting some cards into our hand. We have a fun 1-turn thing like Rush of Battle, just to give all of our creatures +2/+1, and then all of our warriors get lifelink. Could just get a bunch of life in 1 turn on having all of our warriors around. Patchwork Banner is just going to flat buff our warriors by +1/+1, and then add a mana of any color. And then I really like Renewed Solidarity in a shell like this. You choose warrior, all of our warriors get +1/+0. And then at the beginning of each end step, for each token we control the chosen type that we made this turn, we get a copy of it, just giving us more of those warriors for future turns to be able to attack and deal good damage with. But where I think we're going to go ahead and try to push our strategy forward is trying to hit harder, right? We're going to be making these tokens unmobilized. We'll have them around for the next turn. How do we turn this into big damage? Well, There's a lot of ways you can approach it. We have things like Enduring Courage, which give all of our creatures +2/+0 and haste when they enter, meaning those warriors effectively come in as 3/1s instead of 1/1s, making their attacks a little bit better. Gold Knight Commander is going to buff all of our creatures whenever a creature comes in, a huge ability that can turn our board pretty dangerous pretty quickly. We're playing that new Nariv, doubling the damage that a creature would deal if it came in this turn, right? Effectively turning our warriors into 2/1s, although if they're any bigger, right, then that damage doubles. It can be a nice threat for us. And, right, not a bad target for that infantry shield if we need one. Ogre Battle Driver doing the very similar thing to Enduring Courage, just giving that buff when they come in. Banner of Kinship, when it comes in, we're going to choose a type. Obviously, most of the time it's going to be warriors here. It's going to get a fellowship counter for each warrior we control, and then they get all of our warriors get +1/+1s for each counter on this. What I like about the banner is it's pretty easy to, I think, compare this to Coat of Arms. The thing I kind of like about Banner a little bit more than Coat of Arms is if you can get Banner down at the right time and have a huge number of counters on it, it's going to be better than Coat of Arms because you get that pluses no matter what. Obviously, if you start to have a lot of warriors down, then a card like Coat of Arms where you just get +1/+1 for each other type, one of that type can be better. I think you kind of play the mid-range with the Kinship, and then every new warrior that comes in gets that buff. Eldrazi Monument can give all of our creatures flying and indestructible, and we just have to sack one at the beginning of our upkeep. I don't think we mind that at all, especially if we're making multiples on our mobilize each turn. We'd happily sack a creature to give all of our creatures base indestructible, and then all we have to worry about is exiling type removal. All Out Assault gives them all +1/+1 and Death Touch. Again, Death Touch being very important when it comes to chump blocking. And then the turn All Out Assault comes in, we get to get an extra combat as well, which means potentially, right, more mobilized triggers. Just like Gold Knight Commander, Cathar's Crusade does buff all of our creatures when a creature comes in, but instead of just a flat +1/+1 for the turn that the Commander gave us, Cathar's Crusade gives all of them a counter, which is strictly better in my book, obviously, and can get really out of hand, especially with this is putting a counter on every creature, not just the warriors. So our Zurgos get bigger. Maybe that creature that has that infantry shield or something else on it gets bigger too. And then Shared Animosity. Whenever a creature we control attacks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each creature that shares a type with it that's attacking. Thing to note with Shared Animosity. So if we attack with a bunch of warriors and a bunch of mobilized, we want to make sure we put the mobilized triggers off first because they'll bring the warriors in tapped and attacking. The warriors that we get off the mobilized triggers will not get a Shared Animosity trigger, but they will increase the other warriors that have attacked. So it's important to do that so those creatures get an even bigger buff as they're getting into combat. The last thing I think is important to talk about is just some of the other general, like attacks matters, things we can do, some of the things we can take advantage of. We got that new Anok Strike Leader, which is a warrior. Whenever it or our commander attacks, for each opponent, we get a 1/1 goblin attacking that player, and then we can actually sack the Strike Leader, give all of our tokens indestructible. Nice way to really protect our board if necessary. Brutal Horde Chief seems interesting. 4-mana 3/3 that says whenever a creature we control attacks, defending player loses a life and we gain a life. Again, only the creatures that actually declare the attacks are going to matter for Horde Chief, but still could chip off a few damage. And then for 5 mana, we can force all of our opponent's creatures to block this turn, and we can choose how they block. This, I think, is going to be mainly applicable for if we really want to get rid of certain creatures, or like if our whole board has Death Touch with the Butcher or the Assault, like maybe we force our opponents to block certain ways to just really take care of their creatures, right? Even if we're going to trade. It could be a useful ability, but I think just that 1 life every time a creature declares an attack is going to be good enough. Caesar, I think, it just fits really well in any Mardu tokens value deck like this. Whenever you attack, you can sack another creature. If you do, you choose to make 2 warriors that are soldiers that are tapped and attacking. We're going to draw a card and lose a life, or dome somebody for X, where X is the number of creature tokens we control. Caesar's just an overall house of value, and I think even though we're making soldiers that aren't warriors, I don't think we really care. I mean, sometimes those tokens can be really nice, but I think Caesar's really in this deck going to be useful for the first and the third one, dealing out damage. And then if you need the card draw, just take it, even though we have other ways to draw cards. Ironwill Forger gives a non-legendary creature of our choice Myriad at the end of turn at the start of our combat, as long as we have Zurgo down. This, there's some options from what you could use this for. We have a lot of legends in the deck, but we also have a lot of non-legends. And I think there are some interesting options. You could do something like the Butcher to get another copy of a big creature. Note that with Myriad, The tokens that come in tapped and attacking, of course, don't trigger mobilize. So it's not like you're going to get more mobilized from it. But I still think this is overall better value. Because if you pick a decently sized creature, say something like the Bone Care Butcher at 4/4, or that Storm Singer over there at a 3/3, you're just getting extra damage into your opponents. Ishan's going to double up all of our attacking triggers as long as whenever a creature attacks. This doubles mobilize. This doubles so many abilities in our deck, so we will happily take it, even though he's not a warrior. Redoubled Stormsinger may not be a warrior, but it's got a lot of really good effects for us whenever this creature attacks. For each creature token that entered the battlefield this turn, we get to make a tapped and attacking copy of it. At being the next end step, sacrifice those tokens. Two things to note here on the Stormsinger. One, if we have its trigger go off last, it will actually see all of the tokens we made from Mobilize, which is really huge, getting second, more warriors. And number two, Zurgo will help protect us from this sacrifice, keeping those warriors around as well. So Stormsinger can be really fun, especially with things like that renewed solidarity we talked about, to really just get a bunch of value. Windcrag's Siege, of course, is a card you're going to see running around everywhere for new decks going forward, giving us that Ishan ability, but on a Boros enchantment, so it's going to get into a lot more decks. Within range makes a couple of warriors when it comes in, and then whenever we attack, each opponent loses life equal to the number of creatures attacking them. Again, huge note here that it doesn't say attack this turn, it says attacking them, meaning that any of the tokens we bring in off attack are going to count for within range, so make sure you put this on the bottom of the stack, so that way you can get that more value. With a lot of the Mardu decks this week, I wanted to start getting Breath of Fury involved. This is a card that has a potentiality to end really some games, especially if you can pair it with some other things. So it says you enchant a creature you control. When that creature deals combat damage to a player, you sacrifice it and attach it to another creature you control. If you do, untap all your creatures and there's another combat. This has the potentiality to take you as many combats as you need to defeat the board, depending on what you have access to. There's a couple ways you can do this. This would be really great if you have something like Enduring Courage or that Battle Driver giving all your creatures haste so that the tokens you make could reattack. But, truthfully, I think if you can get even just one combat off of this, I think it's a really great card that's going to allow you to get more of your Mobilize trigger, more of your other triggers, and just lead to a huge turn for you to push through. But I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. This is my version 1.0 shot at Zurgo. And as we go into testing, I think I'd want to see, do we need more combats? Is extra combat spells something, or extra combat abilities something we really want to look at? I had Full Throttle here just because it can give you 2 extra combats, but truthfully, there's a lot of cards that can give extra combats that I think could be really useful for us. Bloodchin Rager seems kind of interesting. Whenever it attacks, each warrior you control can't be blocked except by 2 or more creatures, so it just gives them menace. I think it's an interesting ability. I just couldn't fit it in to the list where I wanted it. And then I like the idea of Will of the Mardu. That top one giving you warriors equal to the number of creatures target player controls, and then the bottom one can give out some damage to a creature equal to the number of creatures you control. I think this is a really interesting card. I just don't know how often you're going to be really able to game this for as much benefit as we really want, but I have a feeling I'm wrong on that, and it would probably be a card that I would look to bring in testing. Let's do what we love to do best on the channel and get into our playtest. Remember, the goal of playtest on our channel is not to find magical Christmas land. It's not to show off our best plays, but to get in some game scenarios and kind of understand what our deck's trying to do. Here we're keeping a 4-lander with Kaya. Kaya's really fun because her +1 can give all of our current creatures Death Touch and then just put a counter on a token we control. The -2 doubles any tokens we would make for the turn, giving us a really nice ability to double up that. We see the Infantry Shield there. And then Deadly Dispute, you could sack an artifact or a creature, draw 2, and make a treasure. So we've got a kind of nice pieces forming here. We're going to work our way towards, I would guess, Zurgo on turn 3. And let's kind of go from there, right? We want to get Zurgo in so we can get him setting up and attacking. And remember, he has Mobilize 2. So something like that Kaya this turn could get us 4 warriors if we want to. So could something like Renewed Solidarity, as long as some of them stick around. I want to get the shield down, but I think we can get the shield down next turn. I'm kind of thinking about the Solidarity this turn. So he gets +1. You're going to go in and make the 2 warriors. Right? They're going to come in as 2/1s. And then if any of them survive, at the end step, we're going to get copies of them. Let's say, one of them survived, so we get a copy of one of them. Again, not too bad, right? It could be worse, of course, and it also could be better, but I think that's where the Solidarity can be really useful. Now here on turn 5, I mean, Cathar's Crusade gives us a flat +2/+2 to all of our creatures this turn, right? When we attack with Mobilize, we could get the shield in to get a couple more warriors. I mean, I think this makes. I don't have a second white source, so I can't Cathar's Crusade. I was like, oh, but nope. Yeah, I don't. I can't. I don't have a second white source. So, we could do this. I could Deadly Dispute a warrior just to draw a couple cards. I guess we could do that before we commit to playing this. Because the treasure could get me. Well, because then the question is, do I use the treasure to get down something like Kaya, or do I hold the treasure for Cathar's Crusade, right? I still think this makes the most sense. Remember, Renewed Solidarity only cares about the creatures that came in this turn. So that was 2 mana. I've got 3 mana left, right? And I've got a treasure. So I've got a 4th mana that's a white. That can be any color. I think I'd probably just play the shield, hold off on the using the treasure, right, for next turn for something like Cathar's Crusade. Again, attack. Make 2 warriors. Again, if any of them survive, right, we get another one. And now I think as we come into this turn, now we're at 7 mana, right? 2 for the shield on Zurgo, 5 for the Cathar's Crusade. And then now, right, as long as our opponents don't have any removal or anything to stop us, we're mobilizing for 4 total. 2 from Zurgo, 3 from Zurgo, 2 from Zurgo and 3 from the shield. Because remember, it's +1/+0 because of the solidarity. On second thought, if I do the shield second, what it's mobilized. So if I do his regular trigger first, right, and I make 2 warriors, and they all get 2 counters, right, because of Cathar's Crusade. My gut tells me that then I would mobilize for 5 because his power's gone up and I get to choose in which order to do the mobilizes. It just says create X tap and attacking tokens where X is the number of where its power. I'll have to determine the ruling on that. I mean, at minimum, right, we're making 3, which is still 3 counters on all of them. They're all 6/6s, and then we get more on end steps. We're in great shape, but my gut tells me this would actually mean that we would go up because it's just mobilize X where X is its power. And I would think that it would check on resolution. So that's something we'll have to look on the back end. I'll put a pinned comment down below when I figure out that ruling. But if it either way, even if it's 3, you're still talking about 3 counters on all of them. You have a bunch of 4/4s, you have a bunch of 6/6s. I mean, this is just in great shape. And then we're getting 5 more on the end step because of the solidarity. I mean, unless somebody has a board wipe, I think we're just in solid shape. Again, we have to kind of do that for the playtest because we can't simulate that, but it's good to still see what our deck can do if you don't get board wiped, right? And you could see your things happen. Playtest 2 here, we're keeping a 3-lander with Talisman, Gornog. There's the Horde Chief, and then a Path to Exile for some removal. I think we pretty much just start off with that Triome, right? Thunder of Unity is a fun option. On the first one, it lets you draw 2 and lose 2. And then on the second 2, anytime a creature comes in, everybody loses 1 and you gain 1. So it could be really fun to set up next turn when we could start attacking with Zurgo, right? To get some of that. Oh, well, we would have to play it next turn. So it'd be the turn after. So we could try to set up, maybe something like, try to get something like Storm Singer in before we get there. We'll kind of see. I mean, I think Gornog could make some sense as well. We get Zurgo down this turn. We hold up the Talisman there in case we need to path anything. Here with 5 mana, again, I like the Unity to try to set up for next turn. If I do that, I only have 2 mana left. I could Gornog. So Gornog doesn't need to attack to get its ability. So we could go Storm Singer this turn. Storm Singer needs to attack for its ability. Maybe we just do the Thunder of Unity. Maybe we draw into something else. We don't, but okay, it was good to look. Attack, get the warriors. Let's say, one of them survives. Now to this turn, now we're getting the damage in, right? Because we're on number 2 now. Because now my thought is get the Storm Singer in for next turn so it can make us more tokens next turn. Then my thought is Gornog, because Gornog can work this turn, right? When these 2 attack this turn, you can potentially stop certain creatures from blocking and give it a buff, right? And then we get, right, 2 more. That's 3 damage total, right, this turn from the Thunder of Unity. This is one of those cards that, again, you gotta plan it, but I think if you can plan it, it's really useful. Because now on this turn, again, provided no one's touched me, no one's touched anything, right? We what? Mirkwood? Go to combat attack, right? Zurgo makes 2 damage off the Thunder of Unity and the Mirkwood. Stormsinger makes 2 damage off the Thunder of Unity and Mirkwood. And then, now Gordog can, we probably have enough warriors to attack 3 people, so we can set up the cowards that way. And I think we're just in, we're obviously just in great shape here. Obviously dealing a ton of damage to start. We don't get the buffs necessarily, but I don't think it matters, because again, they don't sacrifice unless someone blocks them, right? And that buff, right, would be at 2 from last turn up to 5 this turn. So 5 basically plus 5 plus 0 on the cowards, depending if our opponents got rid of them. I mean, that's now 6-1 warriors, right? I think we're just in good shape either way, depending on what our opponents have. And I think it's a digress we have to make that it depends on what our opponents have. There's no way for us to simulate it, but we could try our best to work around it. Here on Playtest 3, we're keeping a 3-lander with Generous Gift. There's that War Leader, Windcrag Siege, and Cathar's Crusade. Not a bad start. We see the Thunder of Unity to start. Ooh, that is a tapped Dragon Skull Summit. I think we're going to have to just throw that down now. I think our plan, like I said, is still going to be Zurgo here on turn 3, which would have cost us a life there, but I don't think it matters because I think we need to keep building up. Here I'm thinking the Windcrag Siege to get us 4 warriors, right? Double up that mobilize trigger. And, probably one of them or 2 of them die, right? It was turn 4, so people are going to have some blockers. I mean, here I think it's just Cathar's Crusade, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Everything here gets 2 counters, and then everything gets 2 counters, right? So now you've just got some nice attackers. Just bang them down. I mean, with 3/3s, there's probably a better chance they don't just die on attacks. And now at 5 mana, I like the idea of keeping up the duty. So I think, Kargan Warleader could make sense just to straight buff the board. I think Thunder of Unity could make sense to just set up for next turn. Because right now we have the duty protecting the board, right? Sack a creature to give everything indestructible on a counter. I mean, we have plenty of warriors we're willing to sacrifice. I would keep that up. Again, here we're making 4 more. And again, unless 2 people have enough removal to knock our board out, we're got the protection here. We untap, and now the Unity is just going to start chunking people out as we, keep attacking. So not bad. We've got the Unity protect there. We've got the within range we can play, or the War Leader we can play as well in the next turn. And I just think we're in great shape. I don't see myself, honestly, probably ever picking the top-bottom option for Windcrag Siege in this deck, but I guess it is an option in other decks, right? But we'll go one more playtest, because these are kind of quick, because, obviously we don't know what our opponents are doing, but I think it's still good to see the sound choices of how we're making and setting up our turns. 3-lander again, Talisman, Windcrag Siege, man, Thunder of Unity likes us today, and Stormsinger. Stormsinger is a card that I think is going to be good once you see it in a variety of boards. Again, we needed that hierarchy there because otherwise we don't have the white for Zurgo. But I think it's Zurgo this turn. If I Unity, I get a couple extra cards, but then I feel like I'm kind of wasting the second turn of... Right, because if I Unity this turn, I'm probably only playing Zurgo next turn. I just feel like I'd be wasting a little bit of its modes. Turn 4 up to 5 mana. Again, the Stormsinger's 4. We could go Windcrag Siege and get a couple extra warriors this turn. We could try to draw into something else and see if there's something else we can do and set up kind of something for next turn. I mean, playing this now to draw into this next turn to double doesn't feel terrible, right? Stormsinger could be even good, especially if we know we're going to double next turn. Because my thought is, if I Unity and I Stormsinger can't attack this turn, but, Zurgo can still make his warriors this turn, right? And it's okay if any of them die in combat. But now as we come back to our next turn, now my thought is this can be doubled by Windcrag Siege, right? And I've got 3 more mana. I think I could keep up the flare. Right now, this is my only legal target to sack for the flare, but I mean, I think I might be willing to give up Zurgo to protect my board, depending on how much I have. So my thought is play the Soul Ring, or sorry, play the Arcane Signet. So there's that we have 2 mana up, but I mean, the point is just we still have the flare by sacking Zurgo. We go to combat. Zurgo makes me 4, right? Doubling up because of Windcrag. There's 4 damage there. Stormsinger sees the 4 made. First trigger is going to make me 4 more, and then the next trigger is going to make me 8 more. So this is brutal, right? Because now we just chunked a ton of damage this turn just from this Thunder of Unity alone. And I mean, now even if they kill these warriors in combat, I don't think we really even care because we just chunked a ton of damage into our opponents. And I believe, right, we still have that 1 turn left from the Unity. So if we untap, I mean, even if half of these get killed and destroyed, we don't really care because we're still making 4, 8, 12, 4, 8, 16. We're still making so many more tokens each turn. And I think this is where things like Impact Tremors and all that are great for our deck as well. But I think this is the scenario you want. Get things to make these tokens, try to find a way to buff them. We just didn't this game. Hold up the protection for them and just get going. We also could have the Stormsinger down, right, to start having them lose a life when they die. That way it makes blocking them worse. But I think truly, like, this is what you want to see the deck doing, and I think we got to kind of see what we want it to do. But I'd love to know, what do you think of Zurgo down in the comment section below? I'd love to have a discussion about what you think should go in Zurgo, what you put in your list, and I will catch you on the next